Snake man here. Another day in the office. Okay, got up in the morning, cleaned the cages down the racks, down the racks, across, cleaned all them, all the poo stuff, went through the snakes, did all this lot, down there, did all the ones on the top, across the top. And then when we got to here, what have I done, 20 something cages, we take off the lid, and we see a snake, and of course she's in the hide, and part of our checking process of course is to have at least a cursory look at the snake to make sure they're alive and well and happy, because they can get sick quickly like people and you have to be on top of things. Anyway, you might notice this cage is slightly different to our usual configuration. Our usual configuration is, we'll just show you here with this brown snake, the usual configuration is slightly different. He'll probably come out to try to eat me, but anyway, there we have the usual configuration: dry cage, water bowl, and a house that's like an upturned pot. Now, as you can see, I can free handle these brown snakes completely. There's a hand, there's me, as you can see. I can completely free handle this without a worry in the world. Our snakes are the only ones in the country that are vet certified, surgically devenomized. The real reason for that, of course, is for the welfare of the snakes. They never have to be picked up with sticks or tongs. So there you go. I'm just double checking that the cage is shut. Going back to here, the difference, as you can see, the cage is very humid. I've obviously thrown water in there to keep it humid, and the house is of this configuration instead of that's the usual. It's this configuration. It's a slightly different one. Now, why I would have this, it's not normally as good a business plan for a normal snake in a normal situation, but because this, they can lift it up, it's a safer bet. But we've made a largish hole, and the reason we have a lid, it's actually cut from a different bucket. We have a slightly larger bucket and a slightly smaller one. We get the lid from the smaller one, and we make it into like an incubation or nesting box. It's like a house. So we have, this is not a very well done one. We have one here, but we keep them relatively flat because they like the coziness, and they fit in our rack system cages here, so it's easier for us. Anyway, you lift it up, and the reason of course is, anyone who's seen our videos, they were mating a few months ago. Now we have the beautiful South Australian Eastern Brown Snake. This one caught legally from the wild by Ian Renton almost a decade ago now. Anyway, she has in fact produced a load of eggs and laid them in the best possible place she could find in the entire cage. However, because I've saturated the whole cage, it wouldn't matter where she dumped them, they would in fact be okay. A few years ago, this same snake bred, and we had a different sized one of these. I'll hold it over, see it's a bit smaller at the base. It's a bucket. You'll see the configuration. We had a bit of paper in there, exactly the same. Unfortunately, on that occasion, she chose to lay them scattered all over the cage. Now, as it happens, because the cage was so humid, I just simply plucked the eggs off from the floor of the cage, and they did in fact all hatch, all the fertile ones, which I think was the entire clutch. Definitely infertile ones here, not unusual. This is the third time she's laid eggs. Look, having said that, the first lot were probably when she was extremely young, probably a 3 or 4 year old snake, and it wasn't surprising she chucked out infertile eggs. She bred with us few years later, about 4 years later, 5 years later. There was quite a gap there, and I think they were all fertile. I think she did about 10 or 11 all fertile, or there might have been 1 or 2 infertiles, I can't remember the number, but generally fertile. And this time we definitely got some infertile ones there. But from my own experience breeding these animals, as they get older, there is definitely a sharp decline in fertility, or a noticeable, measurable decline in fertility with snakes. So it's probably across the board, but in brown snakes it's definitely the case. So anyway, that's the thing with reptiles, trial and error. You think you know everything, you don't always. In this case, I made a larger bucket for a nest, and she did lay them in the right place. As I said, I did come prepared with this cage for all possible contingencies, and those eggs will not be staying there. They will be removed and stuck in an incubator, and there will be other videos on our YouTube channels for showing a reptile incubator. But essentially, the ingredients for an incubator is to keep it at a steady temperature, and the eggs themselves at a steady humidity. Now this snake, oops, see that? She's a bit highly strung. She doesn't like being touched. See how she flicked me off? See, there. That's your typical large brown Australian leopard does that. She is devenomized, so if she decides to stick my teeth in her, no matter how close I get, we don't really have an issue because she is safe, and that's why we don't use sticks and tongs to move her around. If I want to move her, I just simply use my hand and wave it all over, totally risk-free, and that is the deal. And that's why we at Snake Busters have a perfect safety record, because whether it's here at our facility or elsewhere, we make sure that we put no one at risk. Bye now.